Hi everyone. Thank you for your patience with my upload schedule. It's been all over the place, but you have been so patient and I appreciate you for still coming back. To be frank, my upload schedule will probably keep being crazy. I just have a busy life. My next few uploads are going to be focused on making part 2 to all of the series that I've only made a part 1 for. This is part 2 of the Shiggy story. Then I'm going to make part 2 of the Mike's Daughter story. And after that, I'm going to make part 2 of the Tenya Ida story, which I made forever ago, but I'm still getting requests for a part 2 of it. So, all of you who have been waiting for that, your wish will finally be granted. I hope all of you are doing well. Here goes Kryptonite 2. This chapter is called Rune. What's your real name? Shigaraki persisted. You gave him a stony stare. Yagi. Not your stupid family name, your real name. Kryptonite. That's your quirk, not your name. All Might is looking for me, so I shouldn't go by my real name. Shigaraki's ruby eyes glittered sharply. You met his gaze without blinking. The silence stretched on. He blinked finally and scowled. Fine, don't tell me. But if this is about staying hidden, you can't possibly be stupid enough to go by Kryptonite. Of course not. You shook your head. I'm just going to have Toga make up a generic schoolgirl name for me. Seems like that would be her thing. Toga, Shigaraki scoffed. Is there something wrong with that? I'll help you. Huh? I'll help you pick a name. You raised an eyebrow at Shigaraki dubiously. The two of you sat on opposite sides of the room, him seated casually on a crate, one knee up and the other sprawled out, while you opted to lean against the wall. You will help me pick a name, you stated incredulously. Shigaraki seemed offended by your tone. Yes, he hissed. That's what I said. Okay, you shrugged, starting to feel amused. Let's hear this great name you're going to give me. Shigaraki leaned back, expression surprisingly contemplative. You could practically see the gears turning in his mind. Kryptonite, he muttered to himself, eyes closing in thought. Dabi wandered over, observing. Kryptonite, Shigaraki repeated softly. Night. What goes with night? Darkness, crime? No. Arson? Dabi offered. Shigaraki's eyes flew open. You're going to name me. You looked at Shigaraki flatly. Arson? That's not my idea. Shigaraki glared at Dabi. Dabi shrugged, looking innocent. I thought you were playing a word game. I should have asked Toga, you sighed. Then it occurred to you that Toga's ideas might be just as bad. You hesitated. Give me time, Shigaraki insisted. I'll think of a good name. Okay, fine. Just as long as it's something All Might won't recognize. You started to walk away, then stopped, adding over your shoulder. But it can't be arson. Shut up, Shigaraki muttered, voice muffled as he buried his face in his arms. You suppressed your chuckle, but couldn't stop your smirk. Dabi rolled his eyes and strolled away. When you'd first arrived, you'd been certain that Dabi hated you, but you hadn't sensed that from him lately. He mostly ignored you, and that suited you just fine. What did not suit you fine was sitting in this big boring warehouse. You hadn't run away from being stuck in one room just to get stuck in another. But Shigaraki wanted to wait longer before letting you come on missions. He wanted to scout out how All Might was reacting to you being gone. You found Toga sitting on the ground and sat down by her side. So, what are you guys going to do on your mission later today? Toga squinted at the ceiling. It's not really a mission, it's more of an errand. Kind of boring, but it has to be done. Your curiosity piqued. So, what's the errand? We're going to steal some supplies from a food truck delivery, she pouted. It would be more fun to go to the mall. What? You stood up abruptly. Just taking some food? That's all? Then why is Shiggy saying I can't go? I don't know. Toga pouted, thoughts obviously still on mall shopping. Toga, you outstretched your hands towards her, the silver quirk dampening cuffs gleaming around your wrist. Can you feel my quirk? She shook her head. Then how would anyone be able to find me? You sighed in frustration, slumping down against the wall to sit next to her again. You looked up as you felt your scalp tingle with the movement of your hair. She held strands of it between her fingers, starting to braid them. You have such pretty hair, she complimented, oblivious to your annoyance. She fingered a strand, letting it slide between her fingers. How's it so glossy? Toga, you interrupted, a spark lighting your eyes. I have an idea. You briefly explained. Disobey Shiggy? How else are you going to go to the mall? You persuaded. Oh, fine, she sighed. Then she squealed with excitement, grabbing your hands. We're going to the mall together, just like besties. You grinned. Keep it down. First, we need to convince Kurogiri. Then, we just need to wait for the right time. Convincing Kurogiri didn't turn out to be too hard. He'd do anything if Shigaraki ordered it, so you just told him that Shigaraki wanted to keep your side mission a secret from the rest of the team. 1 hour later, Shigaraki called everyone together to leave. You leaned against the crates, arms folded. The portal opened in front of Shigaraki, but he hesitated, turning around to face your way. As he turned back to the portal, his voice carried as he muttered, "This won't be for long." You blinked as he vanished. Reassurance? Dobby stepped through the portal right behind him, followed by Compress and Twice. Come on, Toga hissed, grabbing your elbow. Kurogiri nodded slightly, creating a second portal that Toga yanked you through. Be careful. Kurogiri's oddly formal voice faded as you and Toga tumbled into another place. You squinted, momentarily blinded by the bright sunlight. The two of you stood on a sidewalk, only a 5-minute walk from the mall. Teleporting really did seem dreamlike, but this was real. The warmth of the sunlight, the new ambient sounds, the feel of the air, the grinding scuff of your shoe against the rough concrete as you turned around in a slow circle. Your imagination wasn't this good. Toga skipped ahead impatiently. Come on! Happiness bubbled up within you, and you found yourself laughing as you ran after her. Now that you'd tasted freedom, you wanted to drink it in forever. As the two of you neared the mall, the sidewalks and streets grew busier. Cars honked, people crossed the streets in floods whenever the walk signs came on. You pulled your hood up, uncomfortable, then glanced up in surprise as Toga grabbed your hand to keep track of you in the crowd. Following her, you flowed with the crowd into the front doors of the mall. It was hard not to gawk. All the sights, sounds, colors. You passed a nail salon, a chocolate shop, and a couple clothing stores before Toga happily pulled you into a boutique with lots of jeans and casual clothes on display. She found a white sweater vest and held it up to herself. What do you think? She smiled toothily. Looks good, you nodded. She grinned, then whirled away to rifle through a clothing rack. In the end, she just stole the white sweater vest, shamelessly stuffing it into her bag as she took your hand and led you out of the store. As the two of you walked down the main hall of the mall, you started to notice a really nice smell. You stopped, almost jerking out of her hand, and she glanced back in confusion. Toga, what's that smell? It smells so good, but not like food. She giggled. I guess you really didn't get out much, did you? You shook your head. Was it that obvious? Come on. Toga pulled you towards a nearby shop. I'll show you. You looked around curiously as the nice smells wafted from every direction. The shop was beautifully well lit and completely full of bottles. They sat on the shelves in neat rows on every wall, forming colorful stacked displays on the tables. You wandered over to a shelf full of glittery pink bottles. What are these? Toga giggled again. They're lotions, silly. Look, the shop is full of perfume, lotion, soap, even candles. It's a fun place to go around just smelling everything. She grabbed a sparkling pink bottle from the shelf, popping the lid open and squeezing some lotion onto her hands. You glanced around nervously. Relax. She rolled her eyes, pointing at the bottle. It had a red sticker that said, Sample. You can try any of the ones with the sample sticker, okay? You nodded, head spinning. Being somewhere as complex and busy as a mall was going to take getting used to. Toga went off to look at some of the candles, so you looked back at the sparkling bottles, reading the labels. Strawberry sugar, it said. You cautiously took the sample bottle and squeezed a bit of the rosy cream onto your hand, like Toga had done, then rubbed it in and inhaled the scent. It didn't actually smell like strawberries, but it did smell nice. You began to wander around. The next display was full of mirror shiny blue bottles, and the label read, Ocean Spray. You opened the sample bottle and sniffed carefully, smelling coconut, citrus, and spicy vanilla. It was even better than the other smell. You were so focused on looking at all the different lotions that you bumped into a tall lady with dark hair. In your haste to step back, you tripped. You felt your stomach plummet, but the lady's hand darted forward and grabbed your wrist with startling speed and strength. The lotion bottle she'd been holding hit the ground, rolling slightly before wobbling to a stop. Whoops, she laughed, amused. My bad. You stared at her with wide eyes, still held up by her hold on your wrist, until she pulled you to your feet. I'm sorry, you gasped. Although you were on your feet now, she still hadn't let go of you. It took you a second to realize that she was examining your handcuff bracelet, her blue eyes bright with interest. Uh-oh. When you'd started to trip, your sleeve had fallen back, leaving the silver metal gleaming and exposed. You tensed. Should you try to jerk your hand out of her grip? Bold fashion choice, she remarked. Her bright gaze studied you. Broken handcuffs, she mused. Is it symbolic? Does it represent freedom? Well, you said, taken aback. Yeah, I guess it does. She smiled, releasing you. Quite the statement. I love it. I'll have to get some bracelets like that for myself. You noticed the lotion bottle she dropped and hastily crouched to pick it up for her, reading the label as you did so. Dark Kiss? You read off the label. The lady laughed at your obvious confusion. One of my favorite scents. Black raspberry, dark vanilla bean, and musk. The name fits it to a T. She winked mischievously. You couldn't help smiling at her playfulness. She smiled back. Well, my dear, keep up the bold fashion choices. It's been delightful. And with that, she whisked away to the checkout line. You watched her back for a second, but jumped as someone grabbed your shoulder. Toga, you gasped. You almost gave me a heart attack. She grinned toothily, then glanced at the dark-haired lady with narrowed eyes. We should go. Already? Toga sighed. I don't want to, but that lady is a pro hero. She might recognize me. Alarms suddenly began screeching through the mall. You flinched. What's going on? Toga muttered something under her breath, pulling you towards the exit. What? You strained to hear her over the alarms. You should probably pull up your hood. She spoke up more clearly, then pointed to a large plasma screen in the central part of the mall. It's kind of awkward to point this out now, but... You froze. In between the flashy advertisements that flicked across the screen, there was one recurring image. A picture of you. You remembered when the photo had been taken, right after the first time you'd tried to escape. All Might had forced you to stand in front of that alley wall and look directly at the camera, probably as a precaution in case he wanted to give your photo to the police in the future. And here it was, your unsmiling face, flashing across a vertical jumbo screen in the mall while the alarms went off, with the words Wanted, Reward, scrolling across the base of the screen. So the alarms, you gasped, stumbling back, are for me? Maybe, Toga considered. Or it could be me. I'm wanted too, you know. Or, she held up a finger to forestall your panic. It could be completely unrelated. Like maybe someone stole something, so they're shutting down the mall to catch them. You blinked. Toga, you stole. Details, details. She waved it off. I mean, someone else may have stolen something. Something worth more than a sweater vest. You thought about it. Maybe Toga was right. Maybe the mall alarms had nothing to do with you. Maybe. Your thoughts were cut off by a running troop of mall police who rounded the corner, erupting into shouts as they pointed at the two of you. Toga? She grabbed your hand. Run! Laughing like a maniac, she sprinted away, towing you close behind as the mall cops gave chase. This is really happening. You felt surreal listening to Toga's laughter, running through the mall chased by a horde of law enforcement officers. This is really... If I make it out of this, I'm never going to the mall with Toga again. A splintering pain forced you out of your thoughts, as old injuries in your shin bones twinged with every step. You tried to push through, but the pain made you slow down. Toga glanced back, quickly taking in the situation. Come on, she yanked your hand. Don't let yourself get captured. I'm not... You gritted your teeth. Kurogiri, you shouted. Kurogiri, we need an exit. You glanced around frantically, seeking the telltale swirl of mist that appeared before a portal opened. Nothing. Where was Kurogiri? Had he heard you? You slammed down onto the polished marble floor as one of the cops tackled you. Your face smashed against the cool marble as you stared dazedly sideways. Ow! The knee of the cop pinned your back to the ground as he yanked your hands behind you to handcuff you. Huh? She already has handcuffs. He sounded confused. Toga was yelling something, and then the cops were yelling about her having a knife. But your head was still in a fog, so it all seemed kind of far away. All you could see was the wall to the side. You focused on the color and texture of the light stones, the way the light from a skylight filtered down across the wall. And suddenly, the wall vanished. You blinked. How hard had you hit your head? The wall was simply gone, leaving open sky and city landscape in its place. Dust billowed through the air around the crumbled edges as a tall figure stepped up to stand in the void. Pandemonium ensued among the police officers. It's Shigaraki from the League of Villains, one shouted. Stand your ground, screamed another, even as a couple officers took off at a run. Your dazed gaze remained fixed on Shigaraki as he walked forward. You watched the dust of the disintegrating wall slowly fall from his long coat and wisp into the air like smoke. The cop who was pinning you to the ground grew tense, his knee applying more pressure until you could barely breathe. Stay back, he yelled, voice cracking. Let her go, Shigaraki hissed. Stay back, the officer repeated. She's under arrest. He yanked you up onto your feet, locking an arm around your throat and making you stumble backwards as he retreated. We're taking her into custody. It's got nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me? Shigaraki's eyes blazed. She's under my protection. I'll give you 2 options. Option 1, you let go. Option 2, Shigaraki lunged forward, eyes crazed. Option 2, I disintegrate the arms you're holding her with. The officer screamed, letting you go in his haste to get away as his sleeves started to turn to dust. Shigaraki seemed bent on vengeance, but as you started to fall, he whirled back. You glimpsed his wild red eyes as you tilted, and then his arms wrapped around you. It took a second to realize why his embrace felt so odd. He'd balled his hands into tight-knuckled fists so that none of his fingers could touch you. What's wrong with you? He hissed. Why can't you stand? You muttered foggily. It was getting harder to talk as patches of blackness edged into your vision. That big ugly cop slammed her head against the floor, Toga complained. What? Shigaraki demanded, hold tightening. Shiggy, you're making it so she can't breathe. Their bickering voices faded away as you lost consciousness. When you woke up, you were lying down in a cot and it was dark. Back in the base? You must be. Your head ached, but you could think clearly again. You propped yourself up on one elbow, grimacing as your head pounded. A dark silhouette sat on the ground near the foot of your bed. You studied their profile. Shigaraki? You're awake? He asked grudgingly. About time. There was an awkward silence. You tried. Thank you for... What were you thinking? He interrupted, rising to his feet. I knew Toga was an idiot, but I didn't think you'd be the one to come up with such a reckless plan. You wanted to protest, but it was impossible to claim that your plan had been good after what had happened. Shigaraki paced back and forth agitatedly. I told you it was for a short time. Couldn't you have trusted me? Do you have any idea of the danger you are putting this group in? Guilt made you squirm inside as you realized that you hadn't even thought about how your actions might impact the rest of the League. All Might hates me, you murmured, feeling small and confused. I didn't think he would go to such extremes to get me back. You glanced down at the silver gleaming on your wrists. I thought once my quirk was hidden, he'd give up the chase. Your own words sounded foolish to you the moment you spoke them. Hadn't you known that it wouldn't be that easy? I'll admit, Shigaraki acknowledged, I am surprised by how aggressively All Might is searching for you. It doesn't add up. There's a lot that doesn't add up. He trailed off, staring into space. You felt surprised by the validation. What do you mean? You said he hates your quirk? Yes, of course. Then why didn't he ever put quirk dampening cuffs on you? Shigaraki demanded. I thought of it on the first day we met. All Might isn't stupid. You flinched. He was right. Shigaraki stalked over, studying your face intently with gleaming red eyes. Does All Might truly hate you? Yes, he always has, you replied without hesitation. How do you know? You looked away, pain building in your chest. Do we have to talk about this? I need answers. Shigaraki, you told me that even if I'm to blame for the death of a family member, it doesn't justify his abuse. But what if... You clutched your blanket around you more tightly. What if, once you hear what I've done, you change your mind? Shigaraki's ruby stare bored into you. You're talking to a villain. You really think whatever you've done is bad enough to scare me off? You shook your head. You call yourself that, but I've seen how you care about everyone in the League. Someone that caring won't understand what I did. Try me, Shigaraki challenged. Whatever you did, it won't shake me. There's nothing that justifies what he did to you. I killed her. Shigaraki studied you as you started to shake. He sat down next to you on the cot and reached for you, but flinched back, curling his fingers in as he thought better. Why don't you start from the beginning? You nodded, throat tight. Slowly, haltingly, you told him. Flashback. All Might loved your mom. He doted on her, gave her everything money could buy, and even brought her on missions with him. He'd started out as a no-name hero, no popularity, no prestige. But teamed up with your mom, his success and popularity began to skyrocket. Your mom's quirk was Magnify. It was basically the opposite of Kryptonite. Whoever she focused her thoughts on received a surge of strength that added to their quirk. It wasn't a very good quirk for defending herself on missions, but that didn't matter. She gave All Might strength, and he was easily able to defeat any villains in the vicinity. Your mom was a private person. She asked All Might to take all the credit for what he did, and he willingly obliged. It was easy enough for her to stay unnoticed. The reporters and cameramen always honed in on All Might's flashy moves, never noticing the dark-haired woman who was nearby for every fight. At first, All Might had seemed uncomfortable taking credit, but as time went on, he grew confident. He talked about his own strength without batting an eye, then went home and enjoyed time with you and your mom, whose quirk and identity remained comfortably anonymous. There was strategy in her anonymity too. If a villain had known that Mom was the source of All Might's strength, she would have become a target. Secrecy kept her safe. But life started to get complicated when you got your quirk. You were only 4 years old. Your quirk was weaker back then. It only took people's strength a little bit. Mom's quirk and your quirk ended up balancing each other out so that All Might didn't feel unwell. But as a couple years passed and your quirk got stronger, he subtly started to avoid you. As a result, you clung to Mom even more. She never avoided you. You were only alone when she went on missions with All Might. You were strictly forbidden from ever following them on missions. So instead, you watched the news. All Might's skyrocketing popularity practically guaranteed coverage, so you skimmed through channels and watched every fight anxiously. All Might always won, and yet every time you worried. Until one day, what you saw on the news made your blood run cold. All Might was fighting a powerful telekinetic villain. Normally, All Might was careful to maintain a safe zone around the fight, controlling the situation so that Mom wasn't endangered. But in this fight, dust and massive pieces of debris were flying everywhere, tearing up the surroundings. "Mom," you muttered, horrified. She must still be alive. All Might was still fighting with her strength. But how long could someone last in that situation? You recognized the location. Some of the buildings in the frame were just outside your neighborhood. You pulled on your shoes and took off, slamming the front door behind you. The only thought in your mind was that you had to save Mom. As you neared the fight, you could see the dust and debris flying around with hurricane force. Walking in the wind became harder, your steps wobbly. Dust stung your eyes, and you could barely make out the 2 battling figures at the center of it. But as you squinted, you saw something closer to you that made your heart throb. Mom crouched behind a broken wall, focusing on the fight as she held one hand to her bleeding forehead. "Mom!" you cried, running forward. She turned towards you, shocked. "Mom!" you sobbed. "You're bleeding. You need to get away from here." "Go home, honey," she coaxed frantically. "Dad will take care of this." "No!" you screamed. "You're in danger. I'm not leaving without you." You were sobbing so hard that you didn't notice your heart catching fire as you absorbed her quirk. But All Might noticed. As the quirk enhancement faded away, he began to lose. A telekinetic blast sent him crashing into the main remaining building supports. The villain laughed in triumph, but he'd miscalculated. With an earthquake-like shudder, the building started to come down. Falling rubble from his own attack killed the villain instantly. Your mom grabbed you, curling around you as chunks of concrete engulfed your world. When you woke up, you were in pain from head to toe. All Might sat by your bedside, his face in shadow. "Where's Mom?" you asked immediately. All Might didn't speak. "Where's Mom?" you asked again, scared. He spoke in a low voice, not looking at you. "What did we tell you about following us on missions?" "To not follow you. But I was so scared. Mom was in danger." All Might stood, suddenly screaming. "You took her quirk! It's because of you that she's dead!" You blinked, an awful numbness spreading through your body. "Mom's dead?" "Yes," All Might snarled. "You killed her." You began to cry, tears streaming as though of their own volition. You refused to accept this reality, but your body was already reacting to it, shock kick-starting your tears. "No," you muttered, "no." All Might slammed the door behind him, leaving you alone. The months after that were a blur of pain. You couldn't remember it well. Verbal abuse became constant, and physical abuse started. The only hatred stronger than All Might's hatred for you was your own hatred for yourself. You despised your quirk. You despised yourself for being the disobedient, stupid kid who had gotten her mom killed. The guilt was overwhelming. You resented All Might, but there was always a part of you that felt you deserved the abuse, that no amount of punishment would ever be enough for what you'd done. End of flashback. Shigaraki had listened to your story in silence, not interrupting even once, despite all your long pauses. By the time you finished, you were shaking so hard and breathing so fast that it felt like you might pass out. The only person who had known the truth about you had hated you. Now that Shigaraki knew the truth, would he hate you too? Shigaraki balled his hands into fists. You noticed, flinching back as he reached for you. But instead of a flash of pain, you felt his arms pulling you into his chest, holding you securely without letting his fingers touch. You were bewildered. Your story doesn't change my view of you, he said. And as for your guilt, let it go. You were a kid. Stop punishing yourself. You gripped the back of his shirt, tears filling your eyes. Within seconds, you were sobbing uncontrollably. Shigaraki held you awkwardly, his hands still in fists, making it impossible for him to pat you on the back or anything. But that was okay. Crying had never felt like such a relief. He knew. He wasn't disgusted. He wasn't shaken. He accepted the real you. An immense weight began to lift from your shoulders. For the first time in your life, it felt possible that you might be able to accept yourself too. I've been thinking, Shigaraki said awkwardly as your sobs turned to sniffles, about your name. Oh, yeah? You asked stuffily. Kryptonite. It kind of reminds me of the word cryptic, and that makes me think rune. Rune? You asked, laughing through your sniffles at the random change in topic. Yes, rune. It means a symbol of mysterious significance. It fits you. You finally pulled back from the hug, wiping your cheeks with your sleeve. Rune. You tested the name on your tongue, then smiled. I like it. Sounds kinda cute. It's definitely a better name than arson. You laughed at his annoyed expression. This, you thought, smiling at him, is the first day of the rest of my life. Thank you for listening to Kryptonite Part 2. This chapter is called Rune, and now you know why. I know there's a lot of questions that this chapter didn't answer. For one thing, if the person who magnified All Might's quirk died, how is his quirk so strong now? And how did Shigaraki manage to disintegrate an entire wall before his abilities had been augmented? And could the answers to both of those questions be linked? Theory time! I'll see them in the comments. And I'll tell you what, if you get it right, I'll tell you. Anyways, yes, there will be more chapters to this. I'm planning for the next upload to be Mike's Story Part 2, and the upload after that to be Tenya Ida Part 2. But after that, I'm thinking I'll come back to this. So stay subscribed, stay tuned, and I will see you next time. Oh, and don't forget to take care of yourselves, drink water, and have a great week. Bye!